everybody. Welcome back to Nerds That Know. We were having some major tech issues, which is why on all of the socials, I said we would be starting approximately at 7:30 because, let's be honest, I run on burlesque time. But which means I'm early. All right, so tonight we are going to be talking about book to screen, film adaptations that have made us sad, made us glad, made us mad, and other words that end in ad. I am Duchess Bobby. With me tonight is King Goon, also known as Man, and Dog is laying at our feet. I'm sure she will pop up here to say hi momentarily. But also with us, we have King Goon.
Hola! How are you?
We are lovely. How are you?
Pretty gosh darn neato, thanks.
All right. So the reason that we have asked King Goon on this particular themed episode is not only is he really old and he has seen a lot of films, but he's also quite the sci-fi reader. So we are going to focus a lot on Dune because that is the most recent, film adaptation that we have all consumed. But before we get there, I have a list. And I also have my notebook. Because I like to be prepared as long as it doesn't involve doing anything correctly with a technical system. Because if that's the case, that just sucks.
This broadcast has been brought to you by duct tape and
A silly string.
Happy Thoughts.
Same difference.
I could use some happy thoughts.
Yeah.
I could absolutely use some happy thoughts.
Absolutely. With you there. Happy thoughts for everybody.
There we go. Hooray.
This is my happy thought.
There you go.
Did you say it was a long day for you too?
Oh, yeah. My Monday hasn't stopped yet.
Jesus. It's Tuesday night for those of you listening.
Yeah. It's still Monday in my world, apparently. Because,
Jesus.
Yeah. It's been a day.
Understood.
Well, we're going
But I'm happy to be here. Let's go.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely. Let's kick loose the rust, man.
We are going to
Let's
kick it
go.
off with some random lists I found on the interwebs of what fans are saying are the best book to movie adaptations. Right? And agree, disagree, or do you just think the movie's shit? Let us know. All right, so first one is The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells. Book was written in 1898. The film came out in 1953.
If we're talking about the 1953 version, it actually wasn't terrible. The Tom Cruise remake was, from an adaptation standpoint, terrible. It was a passable movie as a standalone, but if you knew where it was coming from, it was like, yeah, no.
All right.
No.
My frame of reference on this one, like I on this panel, I am obviously the least knowledgeable about this because I just don't do a lot of reading like these guys do. But I do have a thought on this because the best adaptation of this was the original radio version.
Well, yeah, because that started a panic.
Correct. And if that's how good it was. That's how
Right.
good that reading of
Right.
this was.
Well, and they didn't read it. They treated it like a news broadcast.
Right,
And
exactly.
So it was it was ingeniously done, and as we just said, it actually started a panic in some places because that was a time when there weren't television, so everyone just listened to the radio. There wasn't social media, and you didn't have instant access to video of whatever was happening in the world at any given time. And people just gathered around the radio and listened to baseball, listened to the theater, and listened to music. And this was one of those things that people gathered around and listened to, and it freaked some people the fuck out. And it was amazing.
One of the things that makes me an old man is my love of just old time radio stuff. You guys both know that I just listen to a lot of just talk radio just because it calms the brain down. And YouTube this if you guys want, because it is by far the best adaptation. That original 1953 version was really cool, and there's a lot of iconic scenes from it. The big shadows and the giant monster, and it was all in black and white, and a very cool sci-fi film. But the original version of the radio broadcast is by far the best adaptation of that.
Solid call out.
All right. We will try to include the link in the description of this. Let me make a note to do that. Otherwise, I will forget.
Damn it. Gave the wife something else to do.
All right. Next on the list is I, Robot by Isaac Asimov. Book. It was written in 1950 or was published in 1950. Probably took him more than a little while to write that. And the film came out in 2004 with Will Smith.
Absolute trash. Absolute trash. Couldn't have been further from the source material if it tried, and really was just an action flick as a vessel to put more Will Smith on the screen.
Anytime that in the 90s and 2000s, if you could get Will Smith saving the world, it's like Zendaya the last 15 years. Anytime you can get Zendaya saving the world, it's the same thing as Will Smith in the early aughts and the 90s. But I'm with you, Matt.
He was the ultimate action figure, action hero.
Oh yeah, he was. He was hanging out with Bill Pullman and Jeff Goldblum and saving the world on Independence Day, and hanging out in the Wild Wild West and shooting cowboys and shit like that.
And then you have Men in Black.
Yeah, all that stuff. But like you said, kind of a cool movie from just the film version. Like the actual filmography was pretty neat, the way it was shot, and really kind of one of the first movies that explored a lot of CGI stuff involved with it. So like the movie itself is kind of entertaining, but if you're focusing on the Asimov book, Asimov gets crushed by filmography, and it's because his stuff is a lot more pointed and not more. The ideas are interesting, but there's not an entertainment. He's trying to tell you something about the world in almost every story he's telling, and it's kind of like George Orwell, where like a lot of his stuff just doesn't translate unless you add to it and make it more interesting. Like there's an allegory there, but outside of that, in order to make it an actual movie, you have to add interesting stuff to it. And so because of that, go ahead.
I think they did a passable job with the Foundation TV series because there is a ton of source material there to work with. And this isn't a spoiler because the story's been out for 70 plus years. Right. The iRobot and the Foundation universes are the same.
Yeah.
They actually, don't get mad at me out there. Just read the last chapter of the last Foundation book and it's all there for you. Just trust me. But the Apple TV Foundation series is actually very good. It wanders a bit because like you said, Asimov is dry and very verbose. Not quite to the level of Tolkien. Well, Tolkien would take, a chapter to describe a button on somebody's jacket, but Asimov is a difficult read for sure. And I think they did a really good job. So if you haven't checked out the Apple TV series, it's excellent.
All right. Well, we don't have Apple TV, so I'll have to take your word for that.
Yeah, toaster.
That sounds like a you problem.
No, actually, it's a toaster problem.
It is an us problem because of toaster.
Yeah.
There you go.
Okay. Next on the list, we have Minority Report, published in 1956 as a novella. And then we're going to the Tom Cruise film in 2002. For those of you who have been with Nerds since the beginning, you will know one of our former co-hosts absolutely hates Tom Cruise and refuses to watch anything with him in it.
Who?
That would be Smurf.
They're the same height.
That's probably his problem.
He's a short guy being an action star. I just can't get behind that. That's my Smurf impression.
That did
it's well done.
him, but I appreciate the argument.
Outrage,
I
outrage,
actually-
outrage! I'm an old guy.
I really liked Minority Report. I think it delved into some kind of dark, where are we headed themes that were super interesting, and it had that supernatural kind of, future seeing piece to it with a lot of tech behind it. I enjoyed the heck out of the movie. I don't know that I ever actually read the novella, but if you're saying it's a novella, there's probably not a lot of source material to deal with. It's probably 50 or 100 pages, so they had to flesh it out quite a bit. But I like that one.
I appreciate that whenever they disagree, the woman is always right.
I don't know the source material, but I do like this movie. As far as Tom Cruise movies go, this is like upper echelon Tom Cruise movie for me. I like you, Matt. I know Duchess is the same way. We all love dystopian fiction. The Blade Runner stuff, the Hunger Games shit,
Dystopian bacon.
Yeah, dystopian bacon. But that we love this kind of shit. So of course this is right up our alley. Just a really cool shot movie about futuristic stuff with problems that are socially we have to be aware socially today because they could affect us currently. And we like that kind of stuff on this show.
Yeah, the message holds up today, which is nice.
Yes.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
All right. This next one, and I'm obviously not reading all of these because it's a lot of pages. So I'm just skipping around to the ones that I actually want to talk about. I know that you have actually read this book. Man has read Jurassic Park. And we watch it all the time. Because it's fantastic, and, Jeff Goldblum is amazing, and, there's Jello, and what more do you need in a film?
And Newman gets sprayed in the face by a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And that guy gets bitten in half while he's taking a crap.
Mm-hmm.
That was only step
Not to mention the hot blonde. What's her name? I can't remember. Laura Dern.
Mm-hmm.
Laura Dern is in that, and she's awesome too. Anyways, Matt, carry on.
I also have read this. Well done. Michael Crichton was a genius. I mean, he's behind some of the stuff that people don't even realize. If you're of an age, you'll remember a TV show that ran for what seemed like 20 years on NBC called ER. He was the head honcho behind that. He wrote, and I can't remember the name of it, but it was a TV miniseries based on his book about an alien virus that was killing everybody. And I can't remember the name. It came out in the 70s. God, it was so good. I'll have to Google it while you're discussing your take on this. But Jurassic Park is it's the prototypical message of you shouldn't do that, so don't do that. Right. And this is what happens when humans fuck around with things they shouldn't fuck around with.
It's right. that one line. It's, you were so concerned finding out if you could, you never asked yourself if you should.
It's the age-old tale of scientists saying you probably shouldn't do that, and jackass is not listening to the scientists. Not only that, but there are dinosaurs. Love anything with dinosaurs in it. We are also kaiju stands here on this show.
Very much.
This was kind of an American novelist's version of a kaiju, but also had some like real life implications, and the how much research should we do into the genome and splicing and all that stuff. Any movie with a John Williams soundtrack is on my list of things that I can fall asleep to. Just roll any of them. Harry Potter, Jurassic Park, any of the Star Wars, Indiana Jones. We were watching one the other night, and I was like, yeah, this is one too. But he's got so many of those films, and that score is up there, like probably top 5 scores, and he's got a million of them, right? Like everybody knows, ba bum ba ba da 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 da, or holy fucking shit, it's a dinosaur, Jesus Christ, what the fuck? So you think of the name of that miniseries?
The Andromeda Strain.
Oh, that was good. They tried to redo it, and it wasn't as good.
Yeah, it wasn't very good. And he also created Westworld,
Yeah.
the original, the Yul Brynner version, before they really took off with it on HBO in 2016.
Yeah. So the book was written or was released in 1990, and the film was released in 93. So short gap there. Another one with a short gap, and one that I'm going to absolutely be jumping on, the Hunger Games series. But this is first originally talking about the first movie. The first book came out in 2008. The first film came out in 2012. So this is Suzanne Collins. I know most people are familiar with Katniss and, I Volunteer's Tribute and the whole bit. I think they did a decent job sticking with the story material. The source material for that one, because it's YA, it really comes from that perspective of Katniss. And they did a decent job with that. They made some of the characters, a little more complex in the film, because it was like, hey, this person has to be on here. So Hamish can't just be like, whatever, or Effie or whatever. But I thought that they did a good job with the Hunger Games, actually with all of the Hunger Games movies, including the Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, which came out last year.
Last year or 2 years ago.
And there's actually another book coming out in the Hunger Games universe, which is Hamish's story of when he won the Hunger Games and how he ended up becoming tribute and winning, and what all of the repercussions were for him, because he's the only other winner ever from District 12. So.
Never watched any of the movies, but I did read all three of the original novels. They were decent.
Yeah.
I am the exact opposite of you, Matt. I am on the only have seen the film versions of this. Have not read any of the source material.
Well, that's very much on brand for both of us.
Right. Absolutely. I really enjoyed the movies. There's so much in that filmography that's so much different than a lot of that stuff. And again, we're talking about a dystopian thing. A lot of this dystopian stuff, you get the futuristic keyboards with like Tron and like, these 80s keyboard elements. Well, they took music almost entirely out of all of these films until the most recent one, except for the one song that they carry through the three, and the whistle that they do. They minimize all of the music in these movies, so that the pieces that you pick up stick with you. The theme song to the Capitol. Anytime you hear that, you're like, oh fuck, bad news is coming.
Right, but you also know, like, music can be very uplifting, and music really tells way more than words, right? That's the whole point. And this is coming from the perspective of a community that is deprived of all of that.
Right. There's no art, there's no hope, there's no, they're hunting for food in District 12. It's just very, using music and I focus on music just because, obviously that's a passion of mine, but using the music as keynotes to advance the story, as opposed to letting the score tell the story of the film, which is like what we talked about with Jurassic Park and all the other, John Williams stuff. The Hunger Games is very much driven, and there are moments where like there's panic inducing, like you feel it when she comes out of the tube. You're like, oh fuck, this shit is happening. People will die.
Mm-hmm. Or like when she's going up.
And Cinna, and so the newest movie was really good too. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah. So this next one on the list, I'm going to bet lots of monies that we have all seen it, and at least Matt and I have both read it, and that is Hitchhiker's Guide. So the 2005 British, sci-fi comedy, directed by Garth Jennings. This is the one that they're saying was way better than the big screen adaptation. But the big screen adaptation was also, I think, well done, but not as good. Because
Agreed. Although shout out to Alan Rickman. That was probably one of his best voiceover roles. Hitchhiker's Guide is just, in a word, silly, and it's packaged in a sci-fi universe, and it scratches the itch for fans of science fiction and fans of Monty Python without going into the extreme that Monty Python would get into. But there's a message there, and if you look hard enough, you can find it. And it really is just be a good person and don't hurt anybody else. Yeah. And 42.
Yeah.
The number of people who you can just say 42 and they understand, that's how you know you've found your people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there is a divergence on that number. So that can mean in the baseball community that you're talking about Jackie Robinson too. So.
Yeah, but that's not what we're talking about.
I know. I'm just saying that particular number, it for me has two meanings, because I am with you on the Hitchhiker's Guide, but I am also a baseball fan. So,
but when my sister turned 42 this year,
mm-hmm.
for until June of next year, her husband has to deal with, I am the answer to all and everything. Don't believe me, it's in a book.
Oh, that's good. I'm coming up on that.
Huh? I still won't believe you, but you can totally use that on other people.
I'm going to have 12 months of being the answer.
Yep. All right. Keep going down the list. Ender's Game. Now, that was like required reading when I was in junior high.
What was it?
Ender's Game.
Oh, Ender's Game. Yep. I have mixed feelings on the movie adaptation. They really could have made that into 3 different movies, and they crammed everything into 2 hours and 20 minutes. They did a passable job of really telling the whole story of Ender in a way that made you feel for what he was going through. Chock full of just hammers from an acting standpoint. I mean, you got Harrison Ford, you've got the Ben Kingsley, the Maori space god that he was at the time with the face tats. I mean, the guy was awesome. I have actually read multiple books in that series, and they all kind of have the same coexisting, what have we done sort of theme to it. I enjoy it. If it's on, I'll watch it.
Yeah, I've actually
decent
not
enough.
seen the film. I've not seen the film. I have read the book. Like I said, it was on our reading list when I was in 8th grade.
That answers that question. I have not seen or read that. So
You gotta watch it. It's a good watch.
All right, good deal.
We'll put it on the list.
There you go. That ever-growing, never-ending list. All right, I'm going to skip over the rest of this crap because I want to. Another one of the apparently done very well film adaptations, and I don't know how I feel about this particular thought on that, is Chronicles of Narnia. I grew up watching like the really creepy BBC, like adults are in the puppets of like the beaver,
Adults in the Beaver.
Yes, Adults in the Beaver.
And there we go.
Way creepy. Like she had like the white face and
I remember it.
I loved those. I don't dislike the newer ones, which by newer I mean
20 years ago.
Yeah. But still, oh, and I did not catch this earlier until I just looked down. Greta Gerwig, who did Barbie, is working on a new adaptation as a mini series for Netflix.
That could be cool.
So
I'd watch it.
we're gonna make it again.
For me, the penultimate version of this is the Doctor Who Christmas special, where he goes and visits the widow, and he takes him on that jaunt through the forest, and there's the trees, and I fucking love that shit. It's all, loosely based off of the C.S. Lewis tales, because they do go through. I can't remember. It's like a Christmas present, isn't it?
Yeah.
But that to me is, that to me is what I think of when I think of The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I do like the movies. They're great to just like turn on and just like not have to worry about thought for a while. And still fun, and the new ones are entertaining to watch. Just, the special effects are pretty well done.
I think The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is much better done than like Prince Caspian. There's a reason why they didn't do anything past, because it wasn't there.
I don't even know if I saw that one.
You're not missing much. The most recent adaptation of the Narnia books in, I think it was 2006. I have mixed feelings on that one too. It really was a money grab because of the success of Lord of the Rings, and like, well, what else can we get from old British fantasy that we can put on the screen that we now have the technology to do? And they did that.
Right.
They weren't bad. I mean, it spawned a bunch of memes. I tell one of my other siblings frequently, don't quote the old magic to me. I was there when it was written, because she tries to say stupid things.
I don't know what you're talking about, sir.
Right. And the other cool thing about this is that C.S. Lewis started to write these books simply to entertain his daughter. And then when he was done, she was too old for them, which is kind of tragic in and of itself. Like, the intent of the books were for a young girl, and by the time he's done with them, she's too old to really appreciate from her age and that kind of a standpoint. Obviously, I'm sure she appreciated that they were there and her dad wrote them. And don't get me wrong, don't come at me, but I'm saying she wasn't 7 anymore. So that part of it's kind of tragic, but it's fun fantasy. I have a special connection to those books because our as some may know, our mother is a voracious reader in her own right, and this is one of the first series that she turned me on to when I started down the reading path. I think it was 6 or 7 when I read them for the first time, and I've got copies of them here somewhere.
Brought in the order they were written, or in the order that they happened?
Order they were written.
I have read them in both orders, and it changes the story.
I know I've got a copy of them around here somewhere, so I'll have to check that out. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not like huge and drastic, but you're going, oh, I see why this thing happened, and that's why that happened. But it's like he obviously was going back and like, oh, crap, I have to explain this.
Makes sense.
So. All right. Before we jump over to Dune, which is really the reason we talked Matt into being here, I just have a very short list of movies that should never have been made. The book should have just been left alone. The first one I'm going to start with is Aragon.
Is that the one?
Yeah.
Is that the Viggo Mortensen movie?
2/3 of the film where it's like the dragon hatches, he throws it in the air, he comes down full fucking grown. That is that's like 30 chapters.
Yeah. I agree 100%. I enjoyed Aragon. I hated the movie.
It's so bad. It's so bad.
I never read the source material. I remember when that movie came out, because isn't that Viggo?
Yep.
Isn't that Viggo?
It's Viggo. Mm-hmm.
And so he was a big guy because of his fame from the Lord of the Rings. So he was tagged onto that because of it. And read your script before you sign on, buddy. That movie sucked. And not knowing the source material, that movie was awful.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
All right. Another one that should not have been made, the Da Vinci Code series. Now, I know that my father-in-law will agree with that because he doesn't like Tom Hanks.
Yes.
But I think that the movies by themselves as a standalone are interesting. The books are very different.
Yeah, that's typical for the last 30 years of book adaptations, where it just doesn't seem to have the same panache as the book does. I agree with you. The movies are fine. The books were awesome. Dan Brown was a genius. Enough said.
All right. The next one is Ready Player One. Now, my mother loves this movie. She's never read the book, right? And again, it's one of those, as a standalone film, it's not shit. I don't like it, but it's not shit, right? But if you compare the story of the film to the story that was written, it is so different. The characters, the way that they interact, hell, even the fact that the race, how in the film you have to like go backwards underneath so you get past Kong, right? That's not a thing. And it's a very important quarter.
There are cases where they can get way off base from an adaptation, and it's just brutal. Battlefield Earth by Heinlein is one that I look at all the time. It's just trash. But there's also the one that always strikes me when people talk about it, and I think they're missing the point. Starship Troopers, which is why I've named myself Would You Like to Know More?
I figured that we were going to have to talk about Starship Troopers, but before we go on to Starship Troopers, I do want to have a point about the Ready Player One.
Go ahead.
So that movie came out. When did that movie come out? It was it was pre-crisis, I think. Me and our mother went and saw it together because we had both read the book, and we were both super excited. I enjoyed the movie, and so did she, but we left very confused. Like,
that's easy to do.
That was really good. Were we in the right movie? Half the car ride home, I'm like, I don't remember any of that shit.
So right. It's really funny. I've read the book, but I've also listened to the book. And Will Wheaton is the narrator for the audiobook. For those of you who have not read the source material, Will Wheaton is also the president in the book.
Yeah.
So having him read it,
it's kind of fun.
Was just, especially because he's all like, and then Will Wheaton. Yeah. He's very, very happy with himself. Okay.
We do need to go back and expand on that.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Starship Troopers.
Yeah, so
you and I both have the same thoughts on this, but go ahead.
Right.
Go ahead.
Starship Troopers couldn't be more different in terms of the story from the book to the film. The film is just it's a teenage hormone-filled nudity, gore, all of the things you want. It's got all of the hot people in the late 90s. I think I saw it in 96 or 97 when it came out, so whenever that was. Paul Verhoeven was a genius when he made this, because he made it for the mass audience to really appreciate just an action film with all the things that you want. I mean, all the blood, the guts, the boobs, and all that stuff. Michael Ironside's just chewing scenery. I mean, it was just so good. What he did was he kept the actual message of the book alive in the way that he told this story. Like, Starship Troopers, the book, is an anti-fascism manifesto. And that's what the movie is. It's an anti-fascist manifesto. And if you watch it through that filter, you're like, holy shit, that's what he's doing. Are you kidding me? And I saw a really interesting fan theory actually not too long ago, which sparked my mind into this whole conversation. The humans dropped their own asteroid onto Brazil in the movie. That's the fan theory. They wanted to start a war with the bugs, and that's the way they were going to do it. So they dropped their own asteroid. The bugs didn't do it. I thought that was I thought that was a pretty interesting little wrinkle, even though it's not pointed to at all, right? There's not even a hint of that in the movie, but a genius way of really boiling down the core concept of what the book was, turning into a movie loosely based on what the books had to say, but really just presenting that in a way that people were like, yeah, this is a great fucking movie. I had a blast. And then you think about like, now I got to think.
One of the things, I think it was my dad, it could have been one of my uncles, their commanding officer made them read the original, book as part of like officer training. Like read this, understand it, come back, and we'll discuss.
Mm-hmm.
For like, if you're going to be a good leader, you need to know this.
Yeah, that movie, there's a lot of things I have to say about that movie. I'm going to keep it brief though. That Robert Heinlein, to me, when I was a kid, I read a lot of his stuff and I enjoyed a lot of it. And then that movie came out right when I was at like the height of reading just his stuff. And I watched it and I was like, they kept the characters' names, but other than that, everything is different, but it still tells the same story, just like Matt said. It's anti-military propaganda, anti-fascism, and it's so good. And you get Neil Patrick Harris and Casper Van Dien and Denise Richards, Michael Ironside. The casting is great. You get Gary Busey's kid. It's honestly, it's a really fucking good movie and beautifully shot. Like every scene is beautifully shot. There's so much to it that I just love.
Clancy Brown is in the movie.
So good. Literally everything about that movie is awesome. I can watch that movie almost. It's for me, that's like a top 25 movie, and it shouldn't be there because it's a terrible movie, right? But and it spawned a bunch of sequels, and all the sequels are really bad.
They're so bad.
It's such a cult classic. It's right up at the top of the list of cult classics.
Well, we'll have to come back to why did they make a sequel on another episode.
And that thing went straight to DVD at a time when things went straight to DVD, and it never should have. It was the budget was maybe a tenth of the original. I think they shot it in a farmhouse and they just put some metal sheeting on. It was just awful. It was
so bad.
I can't believe I wasted 2 hours of my life. The third one was okay. But really only in comparison to the second one, because the second one was so bad. It's like Highlander. The third Highlander's okay, but the second one is so bad that it's like, well, it could have been that, and it wasn't. So
that just reminded me of Major League and the fact that the second sequel is only palatable because the third sequel is so bad.
See, it's the other way around, right?
Yeah. The third one's so bad.
Yeah, it's all relative.
Yeah.
So the last one on the list of worst adaptations, I added on to here primarily for my lovely husband and our oldest niece, and that is The Cat in the Hat.
I am so glad you didn't say The Never-Ending Story.
Nope. That is a whole nother, rabbit hole we'll delve into at another time when you are not involved. But The Cat in the Hat.
I fucking love and hate that movie.
That movie is so creepy.
It's awful.
The Mike Myers one?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
No.
So what you have to understand, Matt, is that movie is required watching for one night of the year. And that is when Michaela and I are decorating cookies. So that movie is on in the background while that's going
every
on.
Year when we make Christmas cookies.
And you know what's happened when we've made Christmas cookies. Shenanigans have ensued, and bad things have happened during Christmas cookies that we can't even talk about on the air. But what I can tell you is that The Cat in the Hat featuring Mike Myers was going on in the background. And if she was here right now, she would have something to say about how she likes that movie because of some scene, and I can never remember which scene it is.
Well, and you can make a good Dr. Seuss adaptation. The Grinch Stole Christmas is actually a lot of fun. But you could also
Lorax.
and right, the Lorax is pretty good. Cat in the Hat is just awful. Like, I don't know what they were thinking. So bad.
And it's even worse because of the live action. Like, Mike Myers is just so, he's really very Michael Myers in that.
And he's still very Austin Powers. He keeps trying to throw out that. And I remember there's like 3 or 4 sexual innuendos that he makes at the children that are like, ooh, that's kind of uncomfortable. And it's because he was like just coming off of Man of Mystery, like
right.
Trying to come up with that same humor. It's like, no, you can't do that. They are like 13
or younger. All right, and now the moment you have waited for, Dune. Now, for those of you who are not familiar, I don't know why you're listening to this episode or watching us right now, because Dune has been made and remade and made again. We're going to primarily focus on the most recent Dune adaptation, but we have to do a throwback to the original adaptation film, which was 85?
84.
84. Thank you.
Was that the David Lynch one?
Mm-hmm.
That was the Patrick Stewart Sting movie?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I fucking love that movie. It has nothing to do with the book, apparently. I've never seen it. That's my only throw-in for that. You guys take it away.
Yeah, so I was actually first introduced to Dune with the mini series. That was like 3 parts that had like Children of Dune. I want to say it was like a SciFi mini series.
Yeah, it was on SciFi, and they did Dune. Oh no, they started with Children, I think, and that was the 3 parts. I don't think they even did Dune, did they?
No, they did the first.
Was there original?
Book. Yeah,
I don't remember
they did
that.
the first book, and then they like skipped to Children.
Oh yeah, they forgot Messiah.
Yeah, but and I don't remember the actress who played Jessica in that one, but she was hot.
I barely remember that. It was not good. I would much rather watch David Lynch's version than that.
Yeah, I have read the books since having watched those, and I feel like if I hadn't seen them before and they didn't hold a nostalgic value to me, I would never be able to acknowledge them again. But because that was how I learned all about this massive world, I was, grateful for the trauma.
Agreed.
All right, so the new Dune. First one came out in 21. Second part came out, was that last year?
Yes.
And that is just book 1.
As it should have been.
Yeah.
Absolutely should have been. And we said it really when that movie came out on these very airwaves. The first half of Dune is as true to the source material as any adaptation in the sci-fi world that's ever been done. The themes were spot on. They obviously had to take some things out. It wasn't critical, the stuff that they took out. But the themes were right there. The story was right there, almost word for word. I mean, the way that Duncan goes down, it's awesome. Like, you don't have to worry about him carrying a dog like he did in 84. So well shot, so very well captures the really overarching message of the first half of the book. And then the second half really does a great job of also capturing the message while diverging just a little bit. And I'm okay with the divergence. I'm okay with the way they changed the way it ended. And it didn't change the ending in a significant way. It changed just a little detail at the very end of the book to the movie that I think actually makes it better. And you can't say that about a lot of adaptations. I got into an argument years ago with a buddy of mine who was telling me up and down that Dune was about oil. And having read the thing, 25 times up to that point, we just had this knockdown dragon argument, and he had his opinion and I had mine, and we went our separate ways, both agreeing to disagree. Frank Herbert wrote that book in the 50s. The national concept of oil as a resource and the Middle Eastern influence on that resource wasn't really in the public consciousness at this time. Dune was inspired by Frank Herbert's trip to sand dunes, and he really got into ecology and the way things work together in nature. And that's one of the messages, is how you treat the world around you and how people screw things up. There's messages of anti-religion. There's messages of anti-imperialism. There's messages of you don't buy into prophecy and you don't buy into fanaticism, especially in terms of religion and spirituality. I mean, we've all seen the memes 1,000 times. Lisan al-Gaib. That's so prevalent in the book. I thought Villeneuve did just a fantastic job of capturing those messages. And like I said, the small change at the end, which again is insignificant really from book 1 to book 2, but going forward, because I know they're going to make more, I think it actually made it better. I really salted home the message of fanaticism and people and buying into prophecy and religion. I loved it.
I really appreciated the way that they shot a lot of like the Harkonnen sequence in like that black and white filter, where you still see like little flashes of color here and there. Just like that is the interpretation of that whole household, that whole
culture.
Yeah, exactly. Just it's so different from House Atreides, and like you get to see really from the way that they shoot the scenes with each of the families. Because
that ties into staying true to the source material. Gidi Prime is under a black sun, and there is no color on Gidi Prime because it is a black sun, and that was brilliant, absolutely brilliant the way they did. I agree with you 100%. Only when they're inside and there's unnatural light do you see flashes of color and how things can reflect. When you're outside in the black sunlight, there is no color. It's all just black and white, and you're spot on. It's brilliant.
Yeah, just it conveys so much through that simple filter. But I think it's very beautifully done. I really enjoyed it. I think it's really funny that Jason Momoa, I was blanking on his name for a minute, was so prominent in all of the hype leading up to part 1. And he's not in it very much.
Have you read God Emperor?
No.
Say it again. You haven't? Okay. I'm not going to spoil anything.
Okay, I've only read the first 2 books.
Okay. So you've read Prophet? No, Messiah.
Messiah? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, Dune and Messiah. Then you got Children, then God Emperor. Yeah, so there is so much for them to explore. And on Max coming up, I think it's even next week, they're doing that prequel series.
Yes.
That really explores the beginning of the Bene Gesserit. There's so much in this universe that they can play with, and I hope they continue. They probably could stop with God Emperor, because once you get past God Emperor, it gets fucking weird, and to the point where it's like Herbert was just pulling science-y shit out of his ass. Like we think Star Treks and their tachyons get nuts. He was pulling some weird shit up and making it science fiction when really it was just kind of fantasy. And the story of Leto 2, who is Paul's son, who is one of the kids in Children of Dune. The story of him in God Emperor is the start of it getting super weird. but it's still doable. I think on the big screen, it's just going to be niche, and I hope they get there. I really do. I want to see what they do with that, but and I can't. No, I can't do it. I was going to tell you more stuff, but I can't. Yeah, not going to do it.
I have the books. I just haven't finished them. My to be read list is our guest room. It's only 2 of walls. It's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
Overflowing, but I'm not complaining. I'm just saying there's a lot of books.
Right.
Yeah, I think that with the success that the first 2 parts have had, and the fact that they're going to be putting it on HBO for the miniseries, for the prequels, I don't think we're going to get all 6 of the original books, but there were 7. I thought he only wrote 6, and then his son wrote the other ones.
Yeah, it's based off his notes. So okay. Chapter House is the last one, or is it Sandworms? I always get them mixed up. But Brian did write the 7th one, but it's based off of his father's unfinished work in his notes.
All right, so we'll call it 6.5. Frank wrote, but I don't think we're gonna get all 7. But I'm really excited with what they've done with it so far. I think the casting is spot on. I really appreciate how diverse all of the characters are, and the actors. There are some actors who's like, I don't know if I've ever seen them in something else before, but wow, they did a really good job right there. And then you have Zendaya, who is in everything.
We've already established it.
Right.
Zendaya's in everything, and so is Willy Wonka. That guy's in everything now too.
Oh, Timothy Chalamet. Yeah.
Yeah. I can never remember how to say his last name, so I just call him Wonka.
Chalamet.
Good, by the
way. That's what I'm going with. I'm not sure if it's right or not, but he's a Chalamet to me.
He was a decent Wonka.
I haven't seen it.
I like that film.
That was a good movie.
The really cool thing about it is one of the core parts of the Dune story as written is the political intrigue piece, because there's a lot of that. I mean, the phrase you hear a lot in the books, they mention it a couple times in the movie, are plans within plans. They use that a lot in the book. It's almost like in Game of Thrones, how George likes to say words are wind. He says that a lot. They say plans within plans a lot in the Dune books. And there's a lot of that going on. There are people plotting against each other. And if this happens, and we'll do this. And if this happens, we'll do that. And then when this happens, we'll do this other thing. And we're setting this up, this over here. And it's so well constructed. It's not super linear. There's a lot of depth to things that everybody's doing. And you get this good versus evil. Evil's really bad, but good's okay. If you really dig deep, they're
good's
okay.
Not really as good as you think it is.
Yeah, good's not as good was really good for a while, and then good kind of slides. They shift away from being good just a little bit. Perfect adaptation of those themes, I thought.
I agree. All right, before we call it a night, I have very important question for you. I would like to know your top 5 favorite book to film adaptations and the top 5 absolute worst, in your opinion.
Well, I'll start with Dune, obviously. I don't think we can really talk about American science fiction and especially in terms of novel to film, without talking about Philip K. Dick. He wrote so much in the 50s all the way into the early 90s. And his book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which then became Blade Runner, and then was obviously the source material. Yeah, well, you didn't say it, so I'm bringing it up.
That's because the list is 23 pages.
Blade Runner is as beautiful a movie in the early 80s as you'll see, from again, here's that dystopian bit, right? The people that living on the ground, it's dirt, it's wet, it's gross, it's very urban, it's technical. There are no animals. There's just androids. You have to be rich to own a real snake, but you could buy one for $100 or whatever. Rutger Hauer at his absolute best. Rutger Hauer in his career has been at times passable and at times just awful. What the hell is a Blind Samurai movie? That was just terrible. That might have been called Blind Samurai. I don't even know. But in that movie, he was absolutely brilliant. And that monologue at the end of that movie with Rutger Hauer is one of the top pieces of American filmmaking ever, let alone just in science fiction. He also wrote Total Recall. And as fun as Total Recall was, it's kind of a trash movie. The special effects are kind of crap. They use a lot of practical effects as opposed to special effects. The eyes bulging and the lady's face coming apart. And, but Total Recall is really, really good. Three boobs, right? And they called it out. And the remake is okay. I liked it. It was good. The Lord of the Rings movies have to be on the list. I think Peter Jackson did a fantastic job of really crafting the world around Middle Earth, making you believe where it was, and his props go out to the people who the site people, whatever they're called. I forget the name of whatever that job is. People go out and find places to shoot, location people. I'm not in the film business. I don't know what they're called, but I know that's a thing. Like they go and find that stuff. So I credit to Peter Jackson, and that's still going on, right? I mean, Rings of Power on right now at Amazon.
I will agree with you on Lord of the Rings. I will agree with you on Rings of Power. The Hobbit did not need to be 3 movies.
No, not at all. No.
They could have done an extra half hour on the first film and been done.
You notice I didn't mention The Hobbit.
I know. I'm just saying because you were saying that universe.
Right. Oh yeah. But the original trilogy, the Lord of the Rings trilogy, is fantastic. But if you go back to, and I'm starting to see some of it on social media in clips and memes, there are people who are rediscovering the original BBC cartoon of The Hobbit, so that's a core memory for me in watching. I remember the orcs singing about whips and ways, and I think it's just genius.
I actually think the BBC film version of The Hobbit more closely matches the play of The Hobbit than the book of The Hobbit.
Man, sounds right. Well, I already talked about it in terms of worst. Battlefield Earth is absolutely dreadful. I can't believe they made that movie. I can't believe they made it the way they made it. It's just so dumb. I walked out of that movie when it finished. I've never left a movie mid-movie, but when I left that movie, I was dumber for having watched it, and I blame John Travolta for that, because it just about anything that he does in that science fiction world is just, you can just tell the influences there. And his, his thing. I'm hard pressed to think of another one that I think is awful, having read the book and then watched the movie itself. So I'm going to leave it with Battlefield Earth, just as the shining example of what not to do.
All right.
How's that?
I'm good with that. I feel like there are definitely a lot more in the strictly fantasy and in the YA especially that they've turned into films, but that's a whole nother episode for a whole nother crowd, because I'm going to guess you haven't read the Princess Diaries series.
I'm going to throw one more out there too. The Shining. It's
not
really different. It's a lot different than the book, but it is a damn good movie.
No, it's a great movie. I wouldn't necessarily call it sci-fi. Supernatural horror.
Yeah. Yeah,
but I see where we're going with that. Right?
Yeah.
It's an excellent movie. I mean, Shelley Duvall, Jack Nicholson, and the movie itself is great. The cinematography is awesome. It scared the shit out of me when I saw it when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Then you go watch
talk
Doctor
about-
Sleep, and you're like,
Yeah, right. Yeah.
it
I was so
wasn't great.
disappointed.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
Speaking of Kubrick, though, talk about a movie that was completely different than the source material, 2001: A Space Odyssey.
Not super different, but
Goofy different.
yeah, Arthur Clarke was on a different level. I mean, the dude hated people so much he moved to some island in Malaysia and just separated himself from everybody. But wrote some really cool stuff. 2001 was a really good adaptation. 2010 was awful. I mean, I love Roy Scheider, but he was done a disservice in that movie and stupid new Hal and everything. I really wish they would have gone back and made 3010 because 3010 was, or 3001 was an amazing read and had some really cool ideas in it and some really cool themes in it in terms of, again, religion and control of people and who's pulling the strings. They'll never get there. It'll never be a thing. But I agree. I'd forgotten completely about 2001. I thought that it was brilliant.
Yeah.
I mean, they told a story the first half an hour that you understood without saying a word.
Yep.
Like, how good is that?
Stanley Kubrick is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Everything he did.
That's a good call out.
All right. Well, what we're going to do on our Facebook page is we'll put up a poll for you guys to be able to vote on your favorites and worst book to film adaptations, sticking with the sci-fi kind of fantasy. Not a lot of fantasy in there, but sci-fi novels especially. Like to hear your opinions. Give us your feedback. Let us know. And we'll tell you if we think you're wrong. Because that's what we do. Because we are the nerds that know. You can find us on all of the socials. Twitch, Facebook. Okay. King Goon has something to say.
I forgot one.
Okay.
So Mark got me down this mental rabbit hole of Stephen
King. Worst based on his face right now.
Yeah. Mark got me down this rabbit hole of Stephen King in mentally. Stephen King was writing so many books that his authors were like, you have to, or his editors were like, you have to slow down. You can't keep pumping books out like this because people are not going to buy them. So he wrote 3 books under a pen name. That pen name was Richard Bachman. And one of the books he released under the name Richard Bachman was The Running Man. The Running Man. You didn't know that was Stephen King, did you?
No. Holy
I will say
no
this.
Idea.
It's not a great, it's not a super deep Stephen King book. It's very much the story's pretty much the same, right? There's a game, you got to get through it, you got to run, all the things. They did 2 brilliant things in that movie. First of which was Arnold. I thought he was the perfect choice. Yeah. The other thing they did brilliantly was Len Dawson as the head honcho of the whole shebang.
Yeah.
He was absolutely spot on. And apparently, and I just saw this the other day, apparently Len Dawson wasn't acting in that movie. He was just being him. Like when he's a turd, everybody around him, like all the makeup people, when he's yelling at him and being a dick, that's just Len Dawson or Richard Dawson. Len Dawson played football. Richard Dawson.
Okay, cool. Because I was like, I don't know who that guy is.
Yeah, Len Dawson played football. He used to be on Inside the NFL. Richard Dawson, who with the Family Feud guy, he was on Hogan's Heroes. I mean, did a lot of cool stuff. But that choice was absolutely brilliant. I love The Running Man. I think it's just so stupid and over the top and
so dumb
and chachi and just prototypical Arnold punch everything kind of movie, but it's fun. It's a good popcorn movie, and I do enjoy it. But it really has nothing to do with the book except that you have to run for your life, that kind of thing. So didn't want to call that out.
right. Well, I appreciate the interruption for that because, you got man over here laughing, so I appreciate that. I was going to tell you guys all about our socials. That's where it was.
Yeah, by all
We are
means.
on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Twitch, and I'm still going to call it Twitter. To quote my best friend, if Elon can use his child's dead name, I can use his app's dead name. So it will always be Twitter in our home. But check us out. We are Nerds That Know on all of the various platforms. We are doing another special episode similar to this one on Friday this week. That will be November 15th. And that is all about unpopular Star Wars opinions with special guest Lola Fett, who is the haunted housewife Lexi Lulu. Matt, where can people find you?
You can find me on all the social channels, my Twitch, Twitter, and my Twitch and Twitter are at Poffalopagus. You can find me on TikTok at King Goon Smoke.
And then if you are interested in sports and actually know who this Len person is, check out both Mark and Matt on their podcast, My Brother is an Idiot. During NFL season, they are on every week with Pew Pew Pick'em, and they'll tell you which games to watch and which games are just going to be a shit show. And then they'll guess who's going to win. It's rather entertaining for those of us in another room listening to them do so. So check us all out. We love to hear back from you. Again, participate in the poll on your best and worst opinions on book to film adaptations. And we look forward to seeing you guys next time. Thank you. Bye.
Adios.